When Emily asked me about my virtues that I would have held on to, there's one thing I would tell any young girl, and I hope that every young girl hears this.
Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way. Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
Save yourself. Save yourself. Save yourself. Please. Save yourself. Sexually, mentally, physically, emotionally. Save yourself. Save you. No man is worth taking so much away from you, because they will. Science has shown that when a woman has sex with someone, she lets out a chemical that makes her feel connected to that person, because that's what sex is meant to be. It's meant to be between one person and another person, a man and a woman who come together forever. That's why our bodies were created, that when we have sex, we are chemically drawn and attached to that person that we've been physical with. For anyone to say that you can just go have sex and just be wild and free and do whatever you want, okay, that's great. But you will start to kill your spirit and your soul and your mind and your heart in the process. Sure, it's fun. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that the drugs and alcohol and the sex and, the music and the rock and roll wasn't fun, because it was. But in the long run, it means nothing to me, because I got hurt more than I felt good. Those moments fleet. They pass. They go. Those moments don't last, because there's more pain and heartache from all the things that you're giving yourself to someone else for, and you're not getting it back in return, and it's painful. So the virtue I wish I had held on to was my purity, was myself, was my self-worth, if I had any. I wasn't raised to think I was good at anything. I was never told I was loved. I was never told I was good enough to be loved. So sex was a way for me to try to find if some man would love me. Because if I just gave myself, they'll love me. He says I'm beautiful. He says I'm sexy. He says I'm this, I'm that. All the things I didn't hear my whole life. Suddenly these boys are telling me these things, and I'm like, whoa, wow. And then you want more. You think this isn't good enough. I have to give more of myself, because if they see me like this now, imagine what they're going to see me like when I'm, giving myself sexually to them. That too is a fleeting moment. Most men are going to say whatever they can to get you in bed. They'll even tell you they love you in hopes that you will give yourself, and they will tear your heart to shreds without a second thought. They will walk away completely fine while you are broken and shattered into a million pieces, and you can't figure out how to put them back together again. So you go look for another man, and you do it all over again and all over again. And you have all of a sudden this cycle that you can't get out of. Virtue, purity, save it. And if you've already given it away, make the decision right now, no more. At 16 years old, I was pregnant by a 27-year-old man because my mother took me to a drinking party. This man asked my mother if he could take me home that night. I'm 16. I'm drunk. He's drunk. My mother says, Sure, go ahead. He took advantage of me in the back of his truck. He never wanted anything to do with me again after that night. And then I was told by my mother that I had to lie about who the father was, because she didn't want her friends to know that one of her friends knocked up her 16-year-old daughter. So she makes me lie to my ex-boyfriend. She makes me get back with my ex-boyfriend. He moves in. I pretend that this is his child. He's all excited that we're going to have a baby, but yet we just still can't get along. And this is killing me. This is one of the reasons why I do not lie and why I hate liars. Because lies destroy lives. And this lie was massive, to the point where this guy today, still in the back of his head, wondered if that was still his child. No matter how many times I told him the truth, finally the truth came out, and this guy wanted nothing to do with me. He did say, well, it's my baby, I'll take care of it, blah, blah, blah. My eldest son never even called anyone in his life dad. He didn't have a father. So from that point on, of being a young girl with a child, I spent my whole life trying to find not only someone to love me, but someone who will accept my son and be a good father for him. But again, I made all the wrong choices, and all my son saw the entire time he was growing up was watching his mom going from one abusive relationship to another. He watched his mother's heart get broken over and over and over and over and over again. It never stopped. And in the process, my son does not talk to me anymore. I've apologized to him a million times. I feel bad for what I put him through. But do I blame him? No. There's more to that story too, but I won't go into that. So when I'm in high school now, my high school writing teacher pulls me aside one day, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I should be going home. The classroom's dark. He sits me down in an empty desk in an empty classroom, and he shows me a pamphlet for Columbia College, Chicago, and he says, you need to go to college for writing. You have a gift and a talent, and you need to go to college. I took that pamphlet and I gave it back to him, and I said, I am a single mom, a teenager. I don't get to do those things. I have to figure out how to provide for my son. I don't have the luxury of being able to go to college now. And that was the end of my story there. That was it. Now, eventually I do try to go to college after I started working, and they were going to pay for me to go to college. But because I was working full time and I was a single mom, I was having to go to school part time. I got so far and never graduated college. I am probably about 20 credits short of my degree, and I'll never get my degree. See, the choices we make, they last a lifetime. So now let's go back to her question of, at what point in your life do you realize that your young days are over, and do they ever truly end? No, they don't ever truly end, because I think inside we always feel young at heart. We never really see ourselves as the old person that we are. I'm going to be 52 years old in 2 weeks, and I don't feel 52. Some people say I don't look 52. Thank you. But lots of times I look at my hands, how wrinkled they are. I look at my chest and I see how worn my skin is, and I see this thing. And I think, where did this all come from? How did this happen to me? And how did it happen so fast? See, that's the thing, Emily. Young women, it's going to go by so fast. You may be young and beautiful and pretty and carefree now, but tomorrow you're going to be old and you're going to be wrinkled, and you'll look in the mirror and you'll say, I don't know this person. I don't recognize you anymore. And you try to fix it all. You're like, man, if I could just lose some weight, if I could just tuck back all this fat that I got, if I could just only get rid of this thing, I'll be loved. That's all I think about. Now, I'll tell you just very briefly a little bit about my situation now and how I came to this point to write that response to this post on Pinterest. When my son became an adult, I finally started living for me. I've always wanted to live in the city, and for the first time in my life, I was able to do what I wanted to do. I was no longer being controlled by being a mom who had to be responsible. I was no longer under a man's control, because for so long, that's all I did, is I lived for men. I lived for their needs, for their dreams, for their wants, and I never got anything in return. And so at this point, not only do I not have to take care of my son anymore physically, but I was single and I really liked it. And I was thin and I was just getting out of a really bad marriage. And I just decided, you know what? I'm going to go live for me. I'm going to do something for me. And so I moved to Chicago. I moved to the city, and I wanted just this dream job. I just wanted to be a tour guide. I wanted to have fun. I had been living the corporate life and doing all these yucky things that just didn't make me happy. And I wanted to be happy. For once in my life, I just wanted to be happy. So I moved to Chicago. I applied for this tour guide position on the boats along the river, and I get the job. Oh my gosh, for the first time in my life, I was happy. Like super, incredibly, massively happy. And then I met this guy that did something that was so disturbing. And I was on the boats one day, and I had this little break in between my tour, and I went in to go talk to the captain and the deckhands, and I'm telling them the story of what this guy did, and they're all like horrified, like, what? And the captain says, how is it that you don't meet some good guys out here? You're so beautiful. Like, what is going on? I said, nobody ever asks me out. And finally they said, well, Jared over here talks about how good looking you are all the time and how much he likes you. Why don't you go out with him? Against my better judgment, I did. Now, when I met Jared, he was sweet, he was kind, he was thoughtful, and he seemed to be really into me, like super into me, like obsessed with me, and loved me, and was so good to me. He did everything that I had always wanted a man to do for me, but to also be for me. And it was beautiful. Now, there were some red flags, but they were different red flags that I wasn't used to, that I hadn't seen before. So in a sense, I was questioning them, but I'd be like, well, that doesn't seem too bad considering all the abuse that I've gone through in my life. And him and I just realized that we wanted a lot of the same things, even though he was 10 years younger than me. I was 38, he was 28. He said he didn't want kids, and of course, I was older at this point. And while for so long I wanted a family for Josh's sake, for my oldest son's sake, I always wanted to be married. I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I always wanted to be a homemaker. That was my dream. Seriously. And that comes from my grandmother's influence. And so when I met Jared, we had these same ideas that, we didn't want children, and I thought that was great. We both were working on the boats. So we had this amazing connection, and we were living life and just having a great time doing it. Then one day he told me that he wanted to have kids. And I remember thinking, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to do this. I am finally living the life I want, and I'm not going to give that up. Not for a man again. I'm not going to do it. But because he seemed so different from all the rest of the men that I had ever dated before, I decided, after a couple days of thinking about it, maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea. It's something I've always wanted. And I really do love him, and he really loves me. And so I'm going to do this. So I said, all right, let's give it a try. A few days later, I got this nagging fear. And I thought, I can't do this. I don't want to do this again. And I don't want to have to be committed to this guy again. I just don't want to do that. I've got this great life. I don't want to give it up. I was already pregnant at that time. I don't regret my son Tavin. He's amazing. I am a stay-at-home mom, and I'm married now to Jared. I homeschool my son. And I thought for many years I had the dream life. Anyone who saw Jared with me would say, man, he loves you so much. Like, you are so lucky. When Jared and I first got together, we were the ideal couple. We were the couple everyone wanted to be. And if they weren't in a relationship, they looked for a Jared. They looked for a Tristine. They were looking to find what we had. But no one knew the pain that I was going through after I had our son Tavin. Jared turned into a completely different person. He was angry all the time. He was violently angry, not to the point of physical abuse, but the rage, and he would break things and throw things. And I'd never seen rage like that before. And I have been in very abusive relationships. He scared me a lot. But I kept it all inside. I didn't want people to know how bad this was. I didn't even know how bad this was until just a couple years ago. He purposely put us in poverty. And then he started getting involved in Mormonism. And his father hated me and was plotting against me for years. And at first, Jared seemed to try to defend me and protect me from that, but he didn't. He was secretly going behind my back and plotting with his father. Until Jared finally pushed me to the point where I left him. And he didn't care. He didn't care that I was gone. He didn't care that Tavin was gone. No sooner had I left, he was already looking for another wife, a Mormon daughter, he said. So I'm 51 years old. We are back together now, but things are not the same, and I don't know if they ever will be because of what he did to me and how he hurt me and how he betrayed me and how he promised me he'd never do the things that I had gone through in my life before. He promised me that if I chose to have a child, he would never, ever leave me and make me be a single mom like I had to be with my first son. He promised me that. Promises, they don't mean anything to anyone. I'm not saying don't trust people. I'm not saying don't believe people when they promise you things. I'm just saying be careful. I'm just saying that while some sense you should be thinking about you, you have to think about others too. That is very true, and you have to care about them. But in the long run, what I really feel is important is to trust yourself first. Because if you can trust yourself, you're going to trust those judgments. You're going to see when somebody's blown smoke up your butt and when somebody's lying to you. You'll see it. And you'll say, no, I don't need that. I don't want that. But see, so many times we don't trust that, or we think we're judging people, or we think, no, that can't be right. Listen, trust yourself. Whatever your gut or your head or your heart is telling you, believe it. That is a tool that we were given, whether you believe in God or whoever. I believe in God, and I believe that God has given me this gift to be able to sense when someone or something is not right. The problem is that we don't listen to it. And that's one of women's biggest problems, is that we don't listen to it. We want to be nice all the time. We let men abuse us and we laugh it off. And we don't really just say, I don't need that. I'm out of here. Now I'm 52 years old and I've given up everything. I gave up a life I really wanted that I never got to have. I have sacrificed the best years of my life to be a mother and a wife to somebody who doesn't really even want to be in a marriage most of the time, and where I don't want to be most of the time. I gave up me. When I finally found me, I gave it up again. And now I'm struggling to find myself. I'm struggling to try to reconnect with myself and the things that I used to love. I'm trying to do art because I've always been good at art too. So I'm trying to do my artwork. I am trying to just find out who I am after all these years of giving myself away for other people. Instead of just being me and loving me and saying I'm worth this, that I'm worth more, that I'm worth more than I give myself credit for. Virtues. When you give yourself away so many times, you lose the values of purity, goodness, love. Love comes harder, but faster. Now, when I say that it comes harder, it's easier to fall in love. But it's harder because it's harder on you. Because you carry so much baggage and you carry so much weight of the past relationships and the past sexual relationships that you had. And you'll carry guilt from the choices that you made out of those decisions. Because one bad decision will lead you down a path of more bad decisions, even though you don't want to make them. Even though in your heart you're like, I can't do this. I shouldn't do this. But you'll do it because sometimes you get to this point in life where there's no turning back. And that's where I went. And I pray with my whole heart, Emily, that you won't do that. That you will take what I have said today and you will know from the bottom of my heart that I pray, that I hope that your life is a beautiful, wonderful, incredible life. But it's everything you want it to be, that you never give up anything for anyone. It doesn't mean that we are selfish. It doesn't mean that we have to be feminists and hate men and hate marriage and all of these things. It doesn't mean that. It just means that when we love ourselves, things just come a little bit easier. When we are doing things for us and we don't let anybody stop us or make decisions for us, we'll be happier. But that doesn't mean you stop listening to your parents, okay? If your parents are good and they're teaching you good values and they're trying to get you to do things that you just don't want to do because you feel a little rebellious, trust them. They're trying so hard to protect you and to raise you to the point where you won't end up where I am today. I wish I had parents who had done that for me. As a 16-year-old, you think you're an adult. You're not. And when you are my age, you're going to look back at 16-year-old girls doing the things that I did at 16 and you're going to go, what? Your mind and your body is just not ready for these things. It's not prepared for it. It's not meant to be like that. Someday you might have a daughter and you might have the same conversation with her. She might ask you the same things. And you have to make sure that your daughter is going to make good decisions. And hopefully you'll make them now and you'll say, guess what, sweetie? You know what I did? This is how I became the woman that I became. And you're going to be amazing too.